It's great to be back at Embry Riddle, great to be back in Volusia County, and great to have a really exciting announcement here today. And joining me is our Lieutenant Governor, Jeanette Nunez, our Florida Department of Economic Opportunity Secretary Dane Eagle, Senior Chancellor from the Florida Department of Education Henry Mack, Michelle Dennard, President and CEO, CareerSource Florida, Dr. Thomas Labasso, President of Daytona State College, from Eastern Florida State College, President James Ritchie's here, Tony George, Board Chair of Indian River State College, Kevin Carr, CEO of Florida Makes, President CareerSource Brevard, Marcy Murphy, President and CEO of CareerSource Flagler and Volusia, Robin King, Brian Bauer, President and CEO of CareerSource Research Coast. And we have many folks from the aerospace industry here. We also have many of our legislative leaders from this area, including the next Speaker of the Florida House, Paul Renner. Fresh off a landslide primary win, Webster Barnaby, our state representative. We have Representatives Tom Leake and Representative Thad Altman. And from the Space Coast, Senator Debbie Mayfield. So we're proud of what we've been able to do in Florida. Obviously, our economy has outpaced the nation consistently over the last couple of years. If you look at the state-by-state job numbers today, we added more private sector jobs, of course. Our unemployment rate is 2.7%. The nation as a whole is 3.7%. If you look at how we've grown faster than the nation as a whole. Our workforce has expanded faster than the nation as a whole. And if you look since 2020, we've led the nation by far in new business formations. Even though a state like California is almost twice our size, we still have more business formations overall than they do, and that's the same with Texas. And we're doing all of this in the face of Bidenflation, in the face of a lot of the problems that the federal government's doing in terms of energy policy, and we're basically doing what we can to power through and to provide Floridians with an opportunity to succeed. I think one of the things that we've seen in Florida over the last few years is how the space industry has really flourished in our state like never before. I remember you go back a decade ago, and the space industry was practically dormant. I mean, they had retired the space shuttle. There was a lot of questions about what was going to happen going forward. Well, you've had a lot of private investment. You've had collaboration with the government and the private sector, and Florida has been a big beneficiary of that because so much goes on from between here and down in the Space Coast. And so we're really, really excited for that. We had Sierra Space come in 2020 to the launch and landing facility on the Space Coast. Redwire in 2020 selected Jacksonville for its headquarters. CAE, a leading space training company, headquartered in Tampa starting in 2019. And then we've also done things like sign memorandums of understanding with Israel in terms of the space that we're able to do and share innovation and technology. Our overall workforce initiatives have been really, really strong. When I became governor, we were in the bottom 50% of states for workforce education. Our goal is to be #1 by 2030, and we are moving up like a bullet. We've done over $5 billion since 2019 in various types of workforce education. We have a record 770,000 students enrolled in high school career and technical programs, which is the highest in state history. You know, they used to teach all the technical stuff in high school. Then that fell out of favor, and they said we got to prepare everybody for college. And our view is well, yes, I mean, you know, we want students to be able to be prepared for that, but we need technical education in the high schools, and so we've really done a lot to help with that. We've created a total of 70 new apprenticeship programs in the state of Florida, and we have more than 320 now available for Florida students. You learn best by doing, and you can sit in a classroom and that's fine, but that's not going to be as good as actually being on the job and learning how these industries work. So we're a big believer in apprenticeships. We've also increased career and technical education enrollment by 37%, with nearly 22,000 total enrollments across Florida State College and technical schools in the state of Florida. We have 143,000 Florida middle and high school students in CTE programs that accelerate students on their path to cybersecurity and IT careers, which is obviously something that's continuing to be very, very important. And we've announced over $89 million for workforce education initiatives, including funding for Florida colleges to create career and technical education charter schools, expand dual enrollment for STEM programs, and accelerate cybersecurity and IT post-secondary career pathways. And we've done 93,000 rapid workforce credentials just last year, an increase of over 20,000, and that's the most in Florida history. We've also used the Governor's Job Growth Grant Fund to not only do targeted infrastructure, but also workforce training and development. And we focused on a number of different things, but things like manufacturing, which you see here in Volusia County and down into Brevard and Indian River County, very important when you're talking about aviation, aerospace, defense, to have folks with those skills. And so we've really been intent on making sure that those industries have a lot of people that they can hire who have the skills that we need. And we understand just how lucrative it is. If you have those skills, you can get hired. I mean, there'll be people that get hired out of high school. I mean, I remember we were down in Brevard, they had the aviation mechanics program, and you could get hired by Elon Musk right out of high school. And these people will make $100,000 very quickly if they're going and doing a good job. And so we want to make sure those pathways are available for people. Some of the stuff you see here in Volusia and down on the coast requires four-year degrees. Engineering, some of that stuff requires even more, and we want to have those pathways, of course, but we also recognize that there's other pathways that are very, very important. And so we're looking at where these industries are going, and we want to make sure Florida continues to be a leader. So today, we're really pleased to be able to announce a nearly $30 million investment in workforce education and job training opportunities, starting really in Jacksonville, going all the way down to St. Lucie County, for industries including aerospace, space, aviation, defense, cybersecurity, and information technology. And so this is $11.5 million from the Governor's Job Growth Grant Fund for Daytona State College, Eastern Florida State College, and Indian River State College that will be used for job training in welding, aviation, and aerospace maintenance, and in manufacturing. $6.4 million through the Pathways to Career Opportunities grant program for apprenticeship opportunities in Brevard, Indian River, and St. Lucie school districts, Daytona State College, Eastern Florida State College, Indian River State College, and a partnership between Florida Makes and Structural Composites Incorporated. $3 million for cybersecurity and IT training programs at Daytona, Eastern Florida, and Indian River State Colleges, and $9 million for CareerSource Flagler Volusia, CareerSource Brevard, and CareerSource Research Coast to support job training for space industry partners. So these investments will provide Floridians with opportunities to attain high-paying jobs in top industries that are growing and that are expected to grow. And if you look at some of these companies, the average salary in a lot of these industries in this area is higher than almost any other industry we have in the state of Florida. The average salary in some of these companies is a six-figure salary. So we think that that's really, really good. So we're going to present the checks to each institution. So who do we got first? All right, Daytona. And if you, yesterday we were up in Northwest Florida and we announced a major expansion in CDL training slots to get a commercial driver's license, to be able to be a truck driver. Huge demand there, huge opportunities, and we did it, and there's already a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of people wanting to sign up and be able to do what we're going to end up going in Florida. When I got in office, we were producing about 800 truck drivers a year through our training programs. We're going to end up doing almost 3,500 a year because of what we've been able to do. This is huge. And you take some of these things for granted. You act like that you go to the store and the stuff just magically appears on the shelf, but I think we've all seen that the folks that power these supply chains are absolutely essential components of having a functioning economy. And I think you're looking at potentially some serious shortages in things like truck driving. So we're working to really fill that gap here in the state of Florida, and I think we're leading the country on it. We also stood up for the truck drivers when they wanted to fire them over the COVID vax. We said, that's your choice. And so that's just one component, but I think that we are providing great opportunities for people. And the thing is we're not just saying go to some program and just get some sheet of paper and that's magic. Because we've seen a lot of students have gone very, very deep into debt across our country, going to a lot of these private universities. They keep raising tuition. $100,000 debts are frequent. And then the degree isn't necessarily producing a lot of opportunities. And so it's really about kind of what skills you're getting rather than what the piece of paper says. And there's certainly so many different avenues where you can be successful. A four-year university is one way, but there's all these other ways through apprenticeships and our state colleges that we're very proud of, and we see the results without having to go in debt at all most of the time. Now, true, in our state universities, there have been no tuition increases since I've been governor. So you can actually go as an in-state Florida resident. The average tuition is like $6,200, $6,300 across our state universities. It's not too many places you can compete with that. We just had the college, some of the university rankings come out, and University of Florida was ranked 5th in the country for public universities. Florida State's in the top 20. So that is giving you value when you can go to a place you can afford, and actually if you do Bright Futures, a lot of times that pays for the tuition, or at least most of it, but it's attainable for everybody. So our view is that's what the universities are going to get, and they've got to find a way to produce a high-quality education. But we're not going to let you raise tuition and have administrative bloat and spend money on all this other stuff that doesn't impact the core education. So value is paramount for us here in the state of Florida, and we have held that line better than anybody. So we're happy to be here. We're going to hear from a couple other folks. So we'll hear from our Lieutenant Governor, and then Dane Eagle, and then Henry Mack.
Good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Governor, and I want to thank our Secretary of the Department of Economic Opportunity, our Chancellor of the Department of Education, as well as our legislative leaders. And today is such a great and exciting day. This announcement and this funding partnership, it is indicative of who we are as a state. And so as Lieutenant Governor and Chair of the Board of Space Florida, I'm thrilled to see how Florida continues to ascend to new heights, in particular as it relates to space travel and exploration. And I think that Florida remains the model for the country in terms of how we successfully run a space ecosystem. And with our main hub, of course, in the Space Coast, but also our growing spaceports at Titusville and Cecil, and an ever-growing workforce. Space truly touches all corners of our state, from Key West to Pensacola, and it is indeed a main driver of our economy. So since 2019, both the Governor and myself have been focused on an expansion to better position Florida as the premier destination for all sectors in the space industry. And that means not just launches, because we know that Florida is the launch capital of the world, but we've also set out to diversify our space portfolio, and that includes advanced manufacturing, operational readiness, defense, science and technology, making sure that we partner with all of the stakeholders, some of which are here today. And so that is something that we're really excited about. And again, as Chair of Space Florida, what we've seen since its inception in 2007, Space Florida has provided almost $6 billion of direct and economic impact, direct and indirect economic impact. And we're on a path in which aerospace will soon provide over $1 billion each year. And that, of course, brings new opportunities to the state, and we're consistently planning for what's next and what the future looks for. Of course, in a competitive market, you always need to focus and invest what we're doing today and make sure that our workforce is keeping pace. And that's been also another area that the Governor has focused on. He mentioned he set out at the onset to become #1 in career and technical, and I think that's been our commitment throughout, both from a funding perspective as well as policy. And what we see is since 2017, our state's space projects have created over 13,000 jobs, and that is only increasing with the Governor's vision and our focus on space and aerospace. The average wage, we know, exceeds $80,000 a year, so these are high-skilled, high-tech jobs. But in addition, as the Governor mentioned, we're focused on those jobs through the career and technical education that will create future welders, as well as engineers, software developers, and so much more. I hear often from many of you in the industry about the importance of workforce. We understand that there is a continuous battle between some of our private sector partners working off of trying to get each other's employees. So we want to make sure that there is a robust educational pipeline to provide talent for all of our space partners. And so, of course, today with the announcement, it's an incredible investment opportunity to work with our educational partners, making sure that this multi-agency funding partnership that the Governor announced will develop necessary apprenticeships, workforce programs, all with the goal of meeting the industry's needs. So I can tell you from our work at Space Florida, we're excited that we see companies flocking to Florida. We see not only companies coming here, but wanting to grow here, and making sure that whether it's moving their full operations and headquarters or looking at expansion opportunities, Florida's business climate is such that we are going to continue to provide opportunities for our industry partners. And so as we look at these opportunities, again, the workforce apprenticeships, internships, and other programs that will develop the necessary personnel for our future, our strategic plan will continue to foster beyond just rockets and launches, although those are exciting and we look forward to future launches, but also to make sure that our commercial partners recognize that we understand the importance of their industry from the state's economy, making sure that we're providing the level playing field that they need to continue to grow here in our state. So thank you all so very much, and it truly is an honor to be here.
Well, today really is an exciting day, just not for the East Coast and the Space Coast, but for the entire state of Florida. The investment that we're making today is unprecedented, and it's really a collaboration of the governor's agencies. He's tasked us and challenged us with working together, signed the REACH Act last year that was passed by the legislature, and while we have the governor's job growth grant fund at DEO, one of the governor's top priorities, and we're challenged looking across the state, where can we invest in workforce and infrastructure opportunities. We're also combining our efforts with CareerSource, represented by Michelle Dennard today, and by Department of Education, represented by Chancellor Henry Mack. So this is an unprecedented investment that we're doing today based on those facts, and what the governor did yesterday based on CDL trucking. We've been seeing the challenges across the nation, and Florida's better off because of the governor's investment. But not only are we doing these grants today, the governor earlier today announced the economic data, the monthly economic data. And Florida continues to lead the nation almost every single measure. Our unemployment rate of 2.7% is an entire point below the nation's at 3.7%. We are the lowest among the 10 most populous states. That's California, New York, Texas. Some of these states did shutdown mandated policies. The governor did free market policies, and the proof's in the pudding. We have over 1.5 million new businesses formed in the state since January 2020, and we are the #1 for net migration. So people are leaving other states. They're coming here in droves, and they're looking to invest in Florida. And I'll just say that with the announcement today, Governor, I think we announced a whole fifth of the allocation for the governor's job growth grant fund. So, Speaker D, we might need to ante up the pot next year. But the legislature's been great in working with that commitment. So, thank you, Governor DeSantis, and thank you to our legislators.
Thank you, and good afternoon. On behalf of Commissioner Manny Diaz, I cannot thank you enough, Governor, and on behalf of all of the faculty, staff, and students across the state of Florida enrolled in these high-quality career and technical education programs, we feel your enthusiasm, we feel your commitment, we feel your support of our faculty, staff, and students to attain a quality credential with every move you make on behalf of everyone across the state of Florida. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The interesting thing is, too, and I would echo actually the anteing up of the DEO grant, certainly the Commissioner and I love spending your money, Secretary Eagle, on our state colleges to invest in those quality workforce education programs, to reverse engineer them so as to meet industry demand. And that's what it's all about. It's about our state colleges and our school districts being flexible enough to understand what is in demand and then tailoring a curriculum to meet exactly what's needed. This all sort of began at the behest or at the request of the governor and the lieutenant governor and of the secretary to think about a comprehensive workforce education strategy for the Space Coast. And we held a convening on June 10th at President Ritchie's campus in Eastern Florida State College. We all got in the room and we said, let's figure it out. And here we are today, months later, with a comprehensive strategy to address short-term and long-term the needs of the Space Coast. And if it weren't for the leadership of the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the secretary, and certainly the college presidents behind me today, we wouldn't be where we are. So thank you, Dr. Ritchie, and thank you, Dr. Labasso, and thank you to President Moore, who cannot be here today, but on his behalf, we have the board chair. And I would be remiss, as I close, too, to not acknowledge some of the staff members at the state level that have coordinated in an unprecedented fashion to the Secretary's point. I hate to name names, but I see one in the audience today, and that's from the Lieutenant Governor's office, Mike Farrow. Without Mike and his engagement and his partnership and his phone calls and his text messages to me over the past couple of months, we would not again be where we are today, together with the EFI team, Destin Wells, and a lot of staff at the Governor's office, especially Alex Kelly and company. Cannot thank you again, Governor, and congratulations to everyone today.
So I think it's going to make a big difference, and if you think about the industries here and what the Space Coast means to space exploration for the whole world, we're going to have astronauts back on the moon, and we are going to have astronauts on Mars eventually, and we need to do that. It's important to do that, and that's going to be something that's done right down the road from here. So you're going to have folks that are already in that industry, of course, that are going to be a part of it. Now with this program, we're going to have more Floridians that are going to be able to have really, really good opportunities, and not just good-paying jobs, but to be part of something that's really historic. So I'm looking forward to that, and I support those efforts. I also was a little bit perplexed when I heard that the president is scrambling to get his cabinet together to try to address the fact that you have governors who are helping to relocate illegal aliens to sanctuary cities. Now, he didn't scramble to get his cabinet together when we had millions of people illegally pouring across the southern border. He didn't scramble to get his cabinet together when you had 53 migrants die in some trailer in Texas because they were neglected by the federal government. You didn't see him scramble to get his cabinet together when we had Americans that were victimized by criminal aliens that he led across the border. You didn't see him scramble to get his cabinet together when we hit record fentanyl deaths, which that fentanyl is coming across his open border. It's only when you have 50 illegal aliens end up in a very wealthy, rich sanctuary enclave, that he decides to scramble on this. And so I think what we are doing what we're continuing to do is use every tool at our disposal to insulate the state of Florida from the negative ramifications of his reckless border policies. And yes, that involves helping with transport. It involves suing on catch and release, which we have done. It's involved making sure that contractors are held accountable if they're facilitating this into our state. And we have a statewide grand jury that's looking at different types of practices that may be going on in the state that's exacerbating the problem. And so, the end of the day, this is a massive policy failure by the president. This is a massive and intentional policy that is causing huge amount of damage all across the country, and it's all rooted in a failure to take care that the laws are faithfully executed and to fulfill his oath of office. And so instead of scrambling and worrying about a bunch of rich people and having 50, and oh, by the way, they already bust them out. They're gone. They said we want everyone, no one's illegal, and they're gone within 48 hours. And so why not actually look at what's going on? There were more Acela corporate journalists in Martha's Vineyard today than have ever gone down to the southern border to look what's going on. Why don't you go down there and look what some of those communities have to deal with every day? All right. Anybody?
Governor, how many of those 50 that you referenced started their flights in Crestview en route to Martha's Vineyard? How many are from Florida, those 50?
So what we're doing is, and so we got the $12 million for the legislature thanks to these guys. And honestly, I have to say, on a bipartisan way, almost every Democrat voted for our $12 million for relocation. They're complaining now, but they all voted for it. So we've done stuff in the Panhandle. But what we found is we haven't seen any major movements of people into Florida like big caravans. The only caravans we saw were people that had H-2A visas. Well, those are obviously legal workers. So we've interdicted people on a onesie-twosie basis, and we said, okay, so we've had people in Texas for months trying to figure out how are these people getting into Florida, what's the movement? And the reality is 40% of them say they want to go to Florida. And so that's a lot, I mean, when you talk about all those people. But the problem is that they're coming in through with like 3 people in a car, and they go through. It's hard for us to know because they're just coming into the state like any other car. So there's not a big movement. So they've been in Texas identifying people that are trying to come to Florida, and then offering them free transportation to sanctuary jurisdictions. And so they went from Texas to Florida to Martha's Vineyard with a flight. There's also going to be buses, and there will likely be more flights. But I'll tell you this, the legislature gave me $12 million. We're going to spend every penny of that to make sure that we're protecting the people of the state of Florida.
Says that you have to use it to get them out of this state. How do you justify using the money if they started in Texas?
Because most of them are intending to come to Florida. They are coming to Florida. We are taking them from Florida to sanctuary jurisdictions. But the issue is, if you want to do it effectively, you just can't police if you have 2 people in a car and there's 100 different cars that come in a different week because it looks like your car or anybody else. And so we've put a lot of emphasis in this. There's been a lot of investigation to try to figure out how this is going. I initially, when I asked for the money, thought Biden was going to be busing because, you know, he has sent midnight flights all around this country. You know, they're complaining about 1 nice flight or 2 flights into Martha's Vineyard. He will dump people in the middle of the night without anybody knowing. They've done it in Florida, they've done it in New York, they've done it in other parts of the country. And so we were anticipating that. In reality, what the federal government's been doing, they're just abandoning these people. So these are people that are just kind of left high and dry. A lot of them are trying to hitchhike. Some of them will pay smugglers to bring them into different states, including the state of Florida. And so our view is you got to deal with it at the source. And if they're intending to come to Florida, or many of them are intending to come to Florida, that's our best way to make sure that they end up in a sanctuary. And why sanctuary jurisdiction? Well, they give them benefits. They do. And so that's likely what they're going to do. Why are we not doing that? Because we're not a sanctuary state, and we want to make sure that we have people here legally. And the thing is, the cost associated, and the thing is yes, the drugs have been catastrophic. There are criminal aliens coming across the border, no question. But even just the sheer volume of people, when you impose that on communities, that's massive cost to just the social system, education, healthcare, public safety, all those different things get very, very taxed. And you saw that in stark relief when one of the wealthiest enclaves in America, indeed the world, said they didn't have the resources to deal with 50 people. Well, how do you think some of these border towns feel? How do you think some of the people in Florida have felt that have seen the drugs or seen criminal activity? And so that's what we're really trying to do. We want to make sure that taxpayers are not having to foot tens of thousands or thousands of people coming in illegally, and that's the most effective way to do it.
Governor, what's your take
yes,
on the accusations that these people were falsely lured, enticed to get on a plane?
So, yeah, I don't think that's totally false. I think if you look, the folks that are contracted, not only do they give them a release form to sign, they actually give them a packet, and in that packet included a map of Martha's Vineyard. So it was obvious that that's where they were going, and they gave that to them. And here's the thing, it's all voluntary, because it's just the type of thing where we think that's the right way to do it. I mean, I think that if the states could send, I would send back to Mexico or back to the home country, but here we are doing it voluntarily. They sign a release, and then they get a packet. So they did get a packet that had the map of Martha's Vineyard, and they're also treated, very well with all this. I mean, they're treated well with meals and everything. This is not, I saw somebody on CNN try to say, sending 50 illegal aliens to wealthy Martha's Vineyard is reminiscent of the Holocaust. And I just thought to myself, has the world gone totally mad? I mean, these are voluntary transportation that they're signing up for, but they're given a good ride, they're given everything, and that's just, it's a humane thing to do. What's not humane is what Biden is doing. He's given a false promise, the border's open, luring people to come here for political purposes, and then basically cutting these people loose and leaving them high and dry. What he should say is, our border's not open. There's ways to apply to come to this country, but just simply barreling across the border is not one of them. And I think you can trace all this back to him coming to office and reversing President Trump's policies, not because Trump's policies were wrong. It was all just a big virtue signal because they don't like Trump, so they have to do everything the opposite of him. Well, now I think we've seen with New York City and D.C., when they used to beat their chest when Trump was in office saying they were sanctuary jurisdictions, and then the minute Texas starts buzzing there, then they get very bent out of shape about it. And so let's just do good policy. I am happy that these are just the beginning efforts. I mean, we've got an infrastructure in place now. There's going to be a lot more that's happening. But I'm glad that this has now put this issue on the front burner, because it really should be on the front burner, because this is an intentional policy that is having really negative implications for not just border communities, but for communities all across the country. And I think there needs to be accountability, and we need to make sure that we know, do people stand for a secure border? Do they want to make sure that Florida is not going to be a sanctuary state? And how are you coming out on all those issues? Very important. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I have a clarification question from his question and then another question if I could. So you're saying they signed the release form and then they were given a map to Martha's Vineyard, but before they signed the form, they were told they were going to Florida?
So no. They are identified as wanting to go to Florida. When they come in. So I had people last summer at the border, and I didn't, we were just trying to help Texas. And my guys were like, a lot of these people want to come to Florida. I'm like, oh man. So then more recently, we have people on the ground there, and it's pretty consistent, about 40% mention Florida. And so what we're trying to do is profile, okay, who do you think is going to try to get to Florida? And if they get in a car with 2 other people, there's no way we're going to be able to detect that. So you're trying to identify who's most likely to come, and then obviously, if they end up coming to Florida, then that's going to impose a lot of costs on the communities, and so we're trying to avoid that. So that's how you're doing it. They're not told that they're going to stay in Florida. They're told that their ultimate destination, in this case, was up in Massachusetts and with Martha's Vineyard.
And then do we pay for both flights, or is Texas paid back for that flight? How does that work?
Yeah, so what we do, we've hired a contractor. There's a bunch of stuff that's gone into creating the infrastructure. Obviously, we've also, done the flights. We may collaborate, but I got $12 million for us to use, and so we are going to use it. And you're going to see more and more, but I'm going to make sure that we exhaust all those funds because I think it's important. I think people want to see that we're actually standing up and trying to protect the state against Biden's really, really reckless policies.
So
Governor, do you think it's right that
there's plans for more flights? Are there any concrete plans?
So look, these are ongoing things. So you're going to look. Obviously, there's going to be buses like Texas is doing. There may be some more flights. Martha's Vineyard's a little bit different because it's an island, so you kind of got to either fly in there or take a ferry. So that was one way to do it. But there's a whole bunch of other places. But I would say that all we're trying to do is offer transport to sanctuary jurisdictions, free to the alien, but certainly not mandatory. And that way, they're able to go. And these sanctuary jurisdictions can put their money where their mouth is, they can provide the resources, they can do all of that. And then once that happens, the chance of folks coming to Florida is probably very, very low. So that's why we're doing it, and I think we're going to continue to do it. Yes?
Governor, a lot of these people are seeking help.
I think it'll be all of it. Obviously, I think you guys know, if you go to southern Volusia County, there's a lot of people that commute into Kennedy and have done that for a long time. You look at a place like Embry Riddle and what they offer here. So yes, there's a lot of great opportunities right here in Daytona Beach, and it'll really, some of this is going to affect Jacksonville because you've had companies eye Jacksonville and be in Jacksonville. We'll go all the way down to Indian River and St. Lucie counties with some of this stuff. So I think this whole stretch is primed for a really, really good run.
So are you saying that Florida is closed?
What's that?
Are you saying that Florida's borders are closed to asylum-seeking migrants who have been led into the country?
So no. I think this is the important thing. So we have a lot of refugees, and we have people that come from Cuba. They end up in the Keys, and they're seeking asylum, and a lot of them have valid claims. But I think what's happening is the asylum process is being abused because they're trained by activist groups to claim asylum. So you'll have people that are in a whole bunch of safe countries, and they keep going from one safe country to the next, and then try to make an asylum claim in the United States. That's not how it works. So that's why President Trump's policy was really the right policy to say, okay, if you're making these asylum claims, most of these are not valid. We know that. I don't think anyone disputes that. So you need to remain in Mexico while you're making the policy, and that's the way it should be. But I would definitely draw a distinction between, some of what we've seen, say, in like southern Florida, where people have qualified for asylum, versus this process that Biden has unleashed, where you really have multiple countries that are safe that you're traversing through just in order to do. And then what they're doing is they're saying you're going to be adjudicated sometime in the future, but then they release them basically into the interior of our country. So ideally, us doing the transport to the sanctuary jurisdictions, ideally that would not be necessary because the people making the claims would remain in Mexico. If there's somebody that really is clearly going to qualify, that's different. But I think you talk to anyone down on the border, it's 95+% are not valid asylum claims. And I don't know, I think part of it is the way it's being enforced. Maybe Congress needs to tweak this because it's not right. And what's going to end up doing, because it's so overwhelming, it's going to cause people, kind of to react in the opposite direction. And there may be people that really do deserve it and merit it who we normally want, and maybe they will end up getting rejected in the future. So it's really short-sighted, I think, if you really want to help, those relatively small number of people who do qualify. Yes?
What do you think about the letter the governor
So the governor of California sent a letter to the Department of Justice saying you need to prosecute Texas and Florida governors, and all I can say is I think his hair gel is interfering with his brain function.